Hello, hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Greetings and welcome to Wednesday, where it is, of course, TRG 30. We're so glad you're all here and with us today. We meet every other week to talk about bold change for resilience here in our sector. And today, we are all about sales. We're getting back into the groove. Now, it's not the first time we have talked about sales here at TRG. Or certainly not in TRG 30. In fact, we dedicated 2 entire episodes to sharing a framework with you that really started with empathy and putting patrons at the center of your recovery campaigns. I am joined today by my friend and colleague, Brad Carlin, and we're going to give you all the details today. Hi, Brad. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. Hi, everybody.
All right, so let's talk about what you should be listening for today. As always, first, it's strategy. We're talking about how you get single ticket sales. These are ticket sales that are not part of subscription or membership campaigns, how you get these campaigns launched and on and to your market. So what's the right strategy? First and foremost is making sure that these campaigns align with your organizational values and goals. Second today is listening for tactics. Before you fall back into old habits, make sure they're really good and make sure those old habits are right for now in your market in this time with all of the variables and all of the complexity that we know is a part of today. And last, action. What can you do now? We say this every week. What can you do now to start your sales positively, robustly, and get things rolling? So Brad, let's start with a little bit of data to know who's doing what and what it's looking like out there.
Oh, yes, please. Thanks, Caitlin. Hey, everybody. We're going to scratch that data itch of yours right here at the top of TRG 30 this week. We'll start with the good news, the encouraging news from our July 2021 comeback study, which we just shared the results of recently. So if you haven't had a chance to fully dive into this yet, not to worry. We'll share a link to this shortly. But good news here, across the 3 regions that we surveyed, an overwhelming number of organizations are planning to come back to live performance in 2021. Excellent news. And yet there's another side to this coin that we want to share with you, which is the number of organizations, although planning to be on sale and have live performances in 2021, many are not yet on sale. So when we look at subscriptions, in both the United States and Canada, a majority of organizations in the United States are not on sale with subscriptions yet, those who have responded to the survey. It's 80% in Canada. When it comes to single tickets, nearly 3/4 of organizations in the United States are not yet on sale, and nearly every organization that responded to our survey in Canada is not yet on sale with single tickets. Although we don't have the exact same data points for our friends in the UK, of those who responded to our survey, 71% of them said that demand is still lower than before COVID. And so this is some challenging information for organizations that are wanting to be on sale and wanting to be back in live performance. But there's still a lot of work to be done. One more data point to throw at you. Here, we're looking at monthly revenues in each of the 4 geographic regions we're tracking in our COVID-19 sector benchmark with our good friends and partners at Purple 7. This is the percentages on the left-hand side are comparing to the same month in 2019. And so, of course, you can see the slope and the cliff that we fell off of in spring and summer of 2020. And you've seen the climb. We've shared a bit of this before. And there's been really encouraging progress. The United States, for example, was at 90% in the month of June of where sales were in 2019. That's getting really close to normal. Data for July is incomplete. We're at half a month's data there. We'll update that once July is complete. But there's some early indications of perhaps some initial changes in what July is going to look like compared to others. The important thing here, the big takeaway, is that selling matters, and when you're on sale is going to matter, and how much time you have to be on sale is going to matter. The autumn is not that far away. Holiday, Christmas, festive period, not that far away. If we don't have products on sale, we need to get on sale stat as soon as we can. If we need to modify our expectations or what we're able to put on sale, we need the time to sell. We know that the more time we have, the more we will be able to sell, and that was pre-pandemic times. So some things you need to be able to consider in your campaigns. First and foremost, let's look at that pile of money, Caitlin, cost of sale. We got to spend money to make money, friends, right? Just have that as a bumper sticker on my car. Cost of sale, real quick, a little bit of jargon alert here. It's just a modified version of ROI. Let's take our expense budget divided by our revenue budget. It will give you a percentage. And we're looking at things like direct costs, what we're directly spending on printing and postage and digital buys and print ads and TV spots, all that good stuff, not necessarily what we're investing into staff salaries and databases and other things. So what should our cost of sale be? I think that depends a little bit on who you are and where you are, but our best practice range for single ticket campaigns is between 20 and 35% in North America and 10 to 15% in the UK. So executives who are right now doing quick math or jotting down things on a piece of paper right now, check your budgets. If your spending is well below this, we may need to consider reallocating some of our investment to ensure that we have enough fuel in the tank to get our sales cars where we need them to go. And marketing teams use this information to be advocates, asking for more, making the case, strategically justifying the investment that you are going to need to hit those unit sales targets, hit those revenue targets. How are we going to get there, Caitlin?
Yeah, how are we going to get there? So we've got money, right? We know what we have to spend, whatever it is. You've got a bucket of money that now you need to allocate across different channels and across time in your campaign to be able to support the sales and relationships that you want to generate for your products, for your shows, for your stages, for your artists, right? Now, what we recommend always is an omni-channel campaign. It's critical for testing and learning what's working, what's not, but it's also really effective in communicating in specific ways with your existing patrons and inviting new patrons in. So a bit more on this. You heard me say it, omni-channel campaign. I did not say an every channel campaign. A majority of your marketing investment should absolutely be in direct measurable channels. Things like social, direct mail, digital, outbound calling. These are really effective ways of measuring the effectiveness of your investment. What are conversions looking like across each of these channels for the assets that you're putting out there? This is what you want to be measuring. Now, that doesn't mean that radio and TV and print and newspaper and outdoor are bad channels or things that you shouldn't consider, but start first with direct. And then if you have additional investment remaining, then start adding back in these mass media channels. They're great for acquisition campaigns if you have a lot of money to spend. If you don't have a lot of money to spend, really focus on places where you can measure the efficacy of every single dollar or pound that you're putting into the market. Now, because of the pandemic, it's possible, it's likely that many of you have chillier pipelines than you would normally have coming into the start of a sales cycle. To be able to combat this, we also want to target and invest in these direct communication channels. We have to invite people back differently. Some of our most loyal patrons and some of our most likely patrons are out of the habit of attending programming anymore. We've got to get them back in it with this omni-channel, totally beautifully targeted and direct campaign. All right, this isn't going to surprise you. If any of you are surprised, it's definitely your first time with TRG 30, in which case, welcome. We're talking about segmentation. We talk about segmentation with our clients every day. I think we probably talk about it here every time we're together. You've got to have a segmentation strategy for this year. Segmentation allows us to talk to people like we know them, and folks, we know them. We know how they've engaged with your organization, when they've engaged, what they're buying, what they like, what they don't. You've been listening and talking to patrons for a year and a half. We've got to act on all of the things that we learned from this now as we start inviting them back. We also know that really well segmented campaigns always perform better. The data show it every single time. Okay, now you're probably used to some sort of segmentation scheme that's based on transactional histories, when people are buying, what they bought, maybe how much they've spent when they buy. Those are still really good segments and probably the base layers that you want to use when you start thinking about your segmentation strategy. And yet we've got to take into account the ways in which people have engaged differently with us over the last nearly year and a half. So here are some examples of what those new segments might be. People who have money on account. How are you really thinking about fulfillment this year? People who've donated their ticketing investments back to you. First-time donors, digital buyers, you know what you've got. And you also probably know where there's volume. So focus here on what those traditional segmentation scheme metrics are: recency, frequency, product, and then layer on top of that where you have volume in other or new segments. And then you're going to get a cake. And your cake could be any of these cakes because they're all beautifully delicious, but they're different. We've got a lovely chocolate ganache here that has 8 million layers in it, and it is beautifully executed and necessary for a complex organization that has a lot of data and a lot of different ways that they need to address patrons coming back. But you also might be perfectly satisfied with this lovely strawberry cake that has 2 layers and some strawberries in the middle and beautifully done. You've got to build a segmentation strategy that you can manage really well. So whatever it is, manage it well and make sure that you've got it set for the campaign. Brad, I will meet you for cake as soon as we are done here.
Cailin, it's almost as if we're like being TRG 30 is sponsored by dentists.
We are sponsored
M&Ms.
by
We're just going to lead people to have cavities.
I know. Next time I'm using vegetables. All right, we're going to all vegetable metaphors from here on out. Okay, so you know how much you're spending, you know where you're spending in direct channels. You've got a timeline for that spend, and you know how you're talking to people along the way. Now you've got to launch it. When we launch, we have got to launch our campaigns with huge, wonderful, effusive enthusiasm and generosity. We're back. You're coming back. You've got live in-person performances this fall. There's something to celebrate in that. And when you launch that first or next single ticket on sale, we got to do it with that kind of attitude. In part, the attitude helps incentivize early buys. We want early buys because there's a good cost of sale associated with people that we don't have to talk to for 6 months. We want people to buy as soon as they know that we've got product on the market. It also helps us get that new influx of engagement. So if your web traffic has been down, if click-throughs on your emails have been low, we've got to get people engaging actively again. So that's the tenor. But here is an ideal, it's bolded, that should be key for maybe what the next slide is. An ideal single ticket sales launch should start early, 3 to 6 months from your first event. Put as much on sale in that on sale as you can. We don't need to do rolling show by show, concert by concert. Put on as much product as you can when you do it. We also want a strong investment here. So as you're thinking about that pot of money that you've allocated, put a whole bunch of it at the front of your campaign in an omni-channel campaign to get interest and engagement from as many places as you can as soon as you go on sale. If you're going to discount, do it now. Do it at the beginning of the sales cycle. It rewards early buying, and it's really good for targeting select segments and incentivizing action right now. Now, if you ever do a discount, there's got to be a clear deadline on it. They don't get 6 months to use their discount. You can give them even just a few days to be able to do it. And of course, we've got targeted messaging throughout this sales launch. Now, I've got clients right now, Brad, here in the States that are absolutely able to implement an ideal single ticket sales launch because of where things are in their community and the appetite that their market has for product right now. But there are some people for whom this probably is not true. So maybe you can walk us through what might be more realistic right now.
Yeah, Caitlin, I love being an idealist, but these are not ideal times everywhere. And so in many places, I know many of the organizations I'm working with, these are times that we're being really realistic. We are aware that there may be constraints in our marketplace. We may be on completely different timing cycles of our seasons and programming decisions and needing to understand and follow and wait for government guidance in some cases, especially for our friends in the UK. And so while Caitlin outlined something that is ideal and we can aim towards that, there are still things that we need to keep in mind when we're adapting, when the ideal is impossible, when we settle for realistic. And so right at the top here is right time. I spoke earlier about making sure you get on sale, we need more time to sell. And in some cases, the realistic answer may be we just don't have as much time. In the UK, we're facing headwinds in sales when we think about the challenges around pandemics and holidays coming up. August is normally a kind of a black hole sales period, but we have lots of folks going on sale and needing to get that autumn and holiday and festive season programming on sale, and doing so at a time where there is huge change with restrictions and huge changes in demand and just focus from audiences. And so timing is important, where not only when we are going on sale, but when we are investing. So considering your investment, the timing of that investment to when you can make sure you can get the strongest ROI on where you're spending money in your campaigns, starting really strong on direct channels. Let's hold back on our more expensive indirect channels of communication, such as our broadcast media, our radio, our outdoor. Let's focus on talking to our database early while we can, while we don't want to spend a lot of money if we're facing a lot of headwinds. Similar to what Caitlin said just a minute ago, discounts early. Let's get access. Let's remember we're talking to folks who we haven't spoken to in a while. We may be in a different relationship with them. We may have new donors who haven't actually been ticket buyers for 2 years or more. And we're in a different relationship. And we've seen in the data that putting an offer out early to energize those early sales can help us reactivate and re-engage audiences. And again, whether it's M&Ms, whether it's layers of a cake, let's be targeted, let's be segmented to the extent that we can. Let's understand the variables that we're facing with our various marketplaces and what we're moving against in terms of our sales patterns. Next, we've got to test. We have to, no matter when we can start, no matter what the conditions are, whether we're in an idealistic campaign or a realistic campaign, we need to test and measure results weekly, daily, even hour by hour.
No, don't.
No, okay, sorry, all right, sorry, not hour by hour.
No.
That would just, that's an unhealthy habit. So let's make sure that it's regular, and it's a regular part of your campaign practice. Don't just measure sales. Let's look at who, let's look at segments, let's look at response rates. Let's make sure our campaigns are being really nimble and effective. So yes, units in revenue. Let's be looking at yield and average ticket price and per caps. Let's think about our pace. Yes, our historical pace may not be the most reliable if we're thinking back to pre-pandemic pacing on sales, but it's what we got right now. So let's at least have something to look at, and then be able to use our own intellect and knowledge of the current situation to determine whether our historical pace makes sense or not. How are we doing against our goal? And response rates by segment. What color of M&M and what layer of cake are you hearing from? Who are you not hearing from? And how are we going to get through to them? And when you are getting through to them, when you are having success, and we're seeing success out there, we are seeing clients do really well in subscription sales. We are seeing folks do really well in Panto and holiday programming sales later on in the year. You got to throw fire on it. This is not the time to take the foot off the gas. This is not the time to ease up. This is the time to capitalize and to make the most of a strong situation that you have. If you still have seats to sell, let's keep pushing and investing to sell every single seat. All right, but there's going to come a time, and I guarantee you that I'll bet a bag of M&Ms that everybody on this call right now is going to have at some point in the rest of the year an opportunity for them to take a detour, where sales are not going to go as expected, where a campaign is not going to progress as you would have desired, and we're going to have to change. But fortunately, we've had a year and a half or more of getting pretty good at this, at getting some practice and understanding the skills that we need to pivot and to change. Even when it's unwelcome, it's a skill that we have developed over the past year. So let's make sure we're nimble and that we use it. And sometimes what this may mean is disinvesting from something that isn't working so that it allows us to invest in a campaign or in a project or in a show or an event that is working, that is selling. Let's make sure that we are knowing when to hold on tightly and when to let go lightly on shows and on opportunities to push revenues and to meet our targets.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So when it's working, we pour fuel on the fire. When we need to change, we've got to be ready to do it quickly. So don't lock in contracts. That's another big thing that we see people doing. Don't lock in your contracts. Internally, stay really nimble in how you're spending, reevaluate those budgets as you move forward. Brad, thank you so much for this conversation. We've got questions coming in. We're going to
We
get
do.
to those. First, it's a couple of announcements. Folks, we're taking August off at TRG 30, which means you too get a break from TRG 30, not from TRG.
One few less webinars in August. You're welcome.
2 fewer webinars. Yes, you get that. But we've got more things coming to you, new ways to connect for executives around campaign building. You'll see all of that in emails soon, and you'll be able to re-register for TRG 30 starting in September, later in August. So thank you all. Enjoy your time off in August. If you need some data before then, you've always got the COVID-19 sector benchmark. Please join us there, check it out. And if we have any unanswered questions after today or new questions that find their way into your thinking, you can reach out to us anytime through our website, through email. You know where to find us. All right, Brad, let's start answering some questions. What do you got there?
I have a couple of questions from Casey and Carrie, in particular related to changes in behavior or comfort levels about folks returning to indoors, or changes in behavior around the Delta variant. So here's what we know. I can speak from organizations that I work with in the UK in particular, who just at the top of this week released a lot of restrictions, and there's been some survey data out asking about comfort levels, and we have started to see some downward trends in comfort levels from audiences in the UK about returning to theaters without having the same level of social distancing or mask requirement restrictions. We are starting to see some hesitation. We're starting to see more questions coming from audiences there, and where even we're seeing in campaign activity that previous shows that had been on sale and performing in June and the first part of July had some success being able to just talk about the show. Yes, they were socially distanced. Yes, they were required to wear masks, but everybody kind of understood what those rules were. We were able to really lean into the experience and how safe it was and what the quality of that experience was. And now we're realizing that those messages are not landing in the same way. We're having to now go back and lean into our buy with confidence messages. We're having to go back and really emphasize the safety protocols that we have in place, that we are, some organizations are starting to identify select mask mandatory performances and marketing them like they would an audio described show or an audience sensitivity show or a matinee, making it really clear that for some audiences where there is a strong inclination to only buy when they are confident that there's going to be certain measures in place, we're starting to lean into that from a marketing message standpoint to put audiences at ease.
Yeah, Brad, Joe asked a similar question about this. You know, with these lingering COVID concerns and Delta variants are all over the headlines, do we really go out early? And I think this becomes a very localized question. What is the appetite in your market? What are the headlines in your market, which may be different than global headlines that you've got to use to inform this? And I think we would still recommend trying something early, because what you've got to figure out, what you have to parse together is patron intent and sentiment and action. Yeah. So they may say, I'm really nervous about this. I don't know if I'm coming back. But then they see that you've got Wicked on stage and a great deal to see it. And they're really eager to do it, particularly with some of that messaging you just mentioned, Brad. Yeah. So I think a test early in the cycle is really important to know what's right for your organization with your product in your place. Just like this was at the very beginning of the pandemic, this is becoming hyper-local, the way that communities are engaging and evolving through all of this. So yes, test it, Joe, I think would be our advice there. What else do you have, Brad?
Jim's got a question about this compressed sales window, which I do think I'm seeing other organizations wrestle with. And you know, I think what this means is, and what I've been working with clients and advising clients to do is to get as much work done in advance as possible. Let's make sure our campaign plans, our emails are preloaded, our segments are ready to go. We understand our messaging and our timing. We're not going to have a lot of time to kind of finesse and go back and forth and get approvals on language. We're still going to want high frequency campaigns. We're still going to want them to be targeted. We're just going to have a compressed amount of time to do it. That also means we might need to think about when our investment starts. So whereas before We might have suggested in a longer campaign that we hold off on spending money on indirect channels until later in the campaign and focus more on talking to more affordable, less cost heavy tactics around talking to your database. We may have to be doing these things on top of each other. We may need to start that really strong investment early, especially if you were in a position to need to drive sales around new audiences. If this is a show that's going to help you get folks outside of your database, if that's a real opportunity with depending on the product that you're facing, I think there may need to be more overlap, which is just going to require more sophisticated planning and preparation for that period when you're able to go on sale so that you can handle all the different plates that you're going to have to keep spinning at any given time.
Ooh, plate spinning.
Plate spinning. How about
Just
that?
what I think we all wanted to get into. Kristen has a similar question here about staggering the single ticket on sale. Now, I said in that ideal single ticket on sale structure, you want to put everything out at once. She said we need to maybe stagger things to still encourage subscription, to still encourage other kinds of buys without getting all of our single ticket sales out there. Yes, do that. Right? If you still have appetite for subscription and your subscription campaign launched late, doing some staggered on sales in this year probably makes some sense. It also lets you test the waters a little bit. Find the right way to test your audience's, your community's appetite for saying yes now. And that could be a really good way of doing it this year. Now, what you don't want to end up doing is having all of these huge rolling single ticket on sales on top of campaigns that are trying to sustain the shows that are coming up next. So maybe you do just a couple, right? You do something for your first 2 shows in the fall, your first 6 shows in the fall. I don't know how many concerts and events you all have, but you do these in small groups. If you can look at grouping some of them by time, it will let you run more efficient campaigns. And again, more learning in those campaigns can happen.
Exactly. I want to hop to Patty's question real quick here. Patty, I see, yes, concerns about needing, if we go on sale now, what do we do if we have to pivot, if we have to change, if we run the risk of cancels or refunds or credits again? And so that's a real fear. It is like none of us have a crystal ball. And if you were to watch the news this week, I'm not sure that there's a lot of, as much optimism as there was out there in the ether as there may have been a few weeks ago. And yet, what we've learned and what we've seen is that audiences have continued to be generous and understanding with changes that are coming based on external factors that everybody knows that they can't control. I've worked with several organizations who have had to put on sale, take off sale, change, move, or reschedule 3 and 4 times. And the rates of retention, revenue retention, have remained really strong. In fact, their lowest rates of retention or highest rates of refunds, for example, happened right initially, upfront, right away when the pandemic started. And with each iterative change that they've had to make, they're hanging on to roughly the same amount of revenue each time. I think audiences are going to want to come back whenever they can come back. I think many of them understand that their investment in you as buying a ticket is a way of showing that their commitment and their support for you whenever they can show up. I would not let that be a deterrent from you going out and starting to have those relationships and engage with your community, engage with your audiences. If you need to pivot, we can pivot. Audiences will be generous. They will come back. When we've given the opportunity, they'll understand is what we're seeing in data. So don't let that hold you back from going out there and at least with all best good faith and knowledge that you know right now about what you're able to put on and when you're able to put it on sale, go out there and engage with your community.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to end on Peter's question because I love it, because it's big and it's smart. And he says, a lesson learned from the pandemic is breaking down some revenue silos between marketing and development. Are we encouraging clients to take a more holistic view of patrons and relationship management? Brad, do you have a short answer to this one?
Yep.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. If you in your organization have been able to successfully do that during the pandemic, carrying that through now as we're going into recovery and re-inviting people back into our spaces, absolutely. So whether that's in actual staff capacities, how are we shifting people and skills against the campaigns that are most critical at any given moment, to really creating some shared budgets and goals between these 2 units that look at audience crossover between different kinds of engagements, that focus on upgrades or elongation of relationship. Yes. yes, do all of it. We would love to talk to you and anyone more about how we do this and why we do this. But we're not going to do it now, and we're not going to do it in August because we're taking a break in August, but we'll be back this fall for more. Brad, thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us regularly here at TRG 30. We wish you a warm, not hot, but a warm and happy August.
Just right.
And a just right August. And we'll see you all very soon. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks all.